Thank you. There we are. Wonderful. Good afternoon, everyone. We are very excited to be here today to talk to you about programmatic buying as a way of how connectivity, that form of connectivity, is bringing equity to media. Now, I recognize that many of you in the audience and those who are watching might disagree, which is why we thought it was so important to actually have this as a topic. Now, you've heard it before, but I want to emphasize again, at P&G, our vision is to be the industry leader in supporting minority-owned media. And not just a systemic, but a sustainable way, such that we are positively impacting the people we serve, the industry itself, P&G, and of course, all of our communities. And again, it's not just for today, but for several generations to come. And for us, programmatic is a pillar of that strategy, and it is serving us well today, and it will continue to do that. And that's why it's so important that we have this conversation. So today, what we're going to talk about is what is programmatic, because I think there's some differences in how we see what that actually is. We'll also talk about why it's important to P&G, and then how do you do it?
Awesome. Well, let's start the level set. I think people have different definitions of what programmatic media is, but for us, and I think for the majority of the marketplace, programmatic at its ground essential level is the automation of media buying informed by data, right? There's some manual effort with direct buys, but from a programmatic, it automates that. That's essentially what it does. And it lets the advertiser choose the impression that the advertiser wants to serve at the right time and at the right place. And I will say that, for big brands or Fortune 500, you take P&G, we got some very big brands in the portfolio that need a lot of horsepower to grow the business. So the media has to be efficient and effective, and programmatic enables that for P&G. And not only for P&G, but if you look at the Unilevers of the world, the L'Oreals, the Nikes, a lot of the big brands use programmatic media to drive the effectiveness they need to grow the business. But let's poke at a little bit, go a little deeper on what it means for P&G. And we have a media model called REE, and it's reach, efficiency, and effectiveness. And all of our brands measure the performance of their media around those three vectors. So they need to maximize reach at the right cost with efficiency and make sure that that impression is the most effective that it can be. Programmatic enables that for us around the REE model. And media is really the number 2 business driver for P&G and its brands. The number 1 is physical availability with distribution in store. The second driver is mental availability, which is media for us to drive the demand in store. But essentially, in its simplest form, it's about choice. And we talked about why this is important for the advertiser, but being able to take the right ad, the right ad and serve it to the right consumer at the right time, at the right cost, it will drive that REE model. This is just showing you an example, and we have brands on very ends of the spectrum on how targeted they want to be versus how much broad awareness they want to be. And programmatic gives you that flexibility. So in this example here, we can get really down. We don't serve an impression in programmatic unless we have that user in our audience profile. And when that user shows up across the internet or in a private marketplace, that's when we serve the ad. But you can see an example here. We can get really granular on demo targets, on household income, down to their habits and practices, and really get targeted to how much we want to pay for a particular user at a given time. So programmatic gives us that flexibility. Whether we see a high potential user, we want to raise the bar on paying a lot more for that user. We see a low potential user, but there's still some value in serving that impression, we may not pay as much. We do this across more so in private marketplaces, but we do play in the RTB, real-time bidding auction. But most of our inventory is going to be centered around private marketplaces where we set the deal terms with the publisher and agree on what's the right cost, what's the right audience and inventory that our brands need to grow. And then that flexibility gives us a lot of things. Given that this is automated with mass scale, we're able to control brand safety. We control our own brand safety list. I think it was an excellent discussion earlier, but we control where we want to show up. We have a list of publishers where we want to and where we don't want to show up. And some of this is algorithmically driven as well, but it also looks at the contextual, or if we want to really get specific on the location. If we're running let's say a Target campaign, an in-cap display here in New York only, I don't want to run a national campaign there. I want to really center the impressions around the New York area to really drive the conversion and trial and the ROI for that particular campaign. So in net, it gives us the full flexibility. It lets the advertiser choose so that we can drive the ROI. I also want to touch in a little bit around personalization. Programmatic gives us the ability to serve relevant and resonant ads. And we got some data that shows how this increases our business performance. But what our brands are doing is creating these smart audiences, and they're connecting them to our DSP, which is through the Trade Desk. And we're putting these, positioning these audiences against private marketplaces. And we're now starting to build out unique private marketplaces around AA consumers or Hispanic consumers or APA consumers or LGBTQ consumers, and really curating those publishers in those PMPs and assigning those to our brand campaigns. So this is very early work, but this is where inclusive programmatic can drive growth. These connections, being connected into our programmatic ecosystem, can enable increase in spend. But not only just in spend, but it increase ad effectiveness there as well. And when you combine these two and you take a relevant ad that's targeted like a Hispanic ad and you put it in resonant media inventory, we see gains. We see a 45% higher than average creative effectiveness. And from a recent AIM study, we see a 17 to 38% sales lift. So when programmatic gives that ability to take an ad and put it into the right context at the right time in resonant inventory. And when you have those two things match, this is where the effectiveness component of that RE really starts to sing. So in the end, in short, it is a big ROI driver for P&G when you look at it from a reach, efficiency, and effectiveness standpoint, and a big enabler that makes our brands grow. And it's a growing format for us, and our brand's going to need that level of horsepower to actually drive their growth.
So, as a publisher and being an ex-publisher that now operates the largest diverse owned and operated media marketplace in the world, how can you benefit as a publisher? One, I would say everything that Eric just said and Charlotte just said in regard to the benefits for a marketer, those benefits in reverse. So when they're talking about supply path optimization, it's revenue optimization for you. So where they're willing to pay the right price for that right impression, that also means that buyer seller value, if Tide or any other advertiser for that matter is looking for that specific audience in that specific moment in your specific context, they will be willing to pay a premium for that impression, as you saw on the earlier slide. So it's the future, it's how things are being transacted, it's the way things are going. And so, part of why I was so excited to be here today was not just for the meetings and the roundtables with the marketers, but to talk to the publishers as well, because quite frankly, there's a huge opportunity for growth for all of us. Increasing competition, that's back to supply and demand. You're managing your waterfall, so this is actually not a race to the bottom, which it was a misnomer 15 years ago because everything started with remnant. Nowadays, it's a race to the right price for that impression. And so if you're not 100% sold out, and you have 10%, 20% left, then ultimately, quite frankly, you can do bump for rate on the top of your waterfall and quite frankly, monetize at actual rate card or beyond for the rest of it. Organizational impact, obviously, less strain and stress on your operations teams, allows for a lot of collaboration between the brand, your tech team and operations, and what you're trying to do in regard to yield, and quite frankly, tapping into the largest spender in the world, that's probably a good thing for your business. So some of the myths, and I actually addressed one of these, race to the bottom, is no longer true. It might have been true 15 years ago. It is not true anymore. Premium inventory is being unloaded, CTV, and quite frankly, in some cases, we're working with Comcast with linear TV programmatically. And so, you know, this is an average unit rate. How are you going to yield your inventory? So it's no longer just remnant bad inventory made to click. That stuff is being eliminated and quite frankly avoided. And machines no longer do all the work. So in the case of Procter & Gamble, 65 different brands, all of those teams have a programmatic expert on their team. So if all you're talking about is direct, then you're missing a big portion of that spend. And programmatic advertising is no longer display banners and video. It's quite frankly everything that you can imagine, including out of home. Mm-hmm. So programmatic, we'd love to partner with all of you. Reset Digital, we started this 4 years ago. After George Floyd and Breonna Taylor, we got a call from Mark Pritchard, and we started working with Eric and Charlotte and Cedric and Don and everybody at the Procter family. And we are so happy to be here and be able to share and, quite frankly, enable.
All right, so what we wanted to do with the rest of the time is actually open it up to questions, whether that be to explain more about how it benefits us, you, or even the how. So with that, we will go ahead and take some questions. Let's see. The screen should change. All right.
So I'll read the question. How does P&G ensure culturally relevant media isn't left out of the equation, as not all diverse media offer programmatic? We can all answer that question.
Yeah.
So, well, I'll start. After George Floyd and Breonna Taylor and that first phone call, and my meeting was with all the leadership of NABOB, National Association of Black-Owned Broadcasters, so TV and radio. This has been important to Procter & Gamble even before that meeting. So if you've ever heard of the $1 Billion Roundtable, P&G, I don't know if you invented the $1 Billion Roundtable, but you certainly were an early adapter. It's always been part of the mission and mantra. Because the business is being organized for Procter & Gamble around programmatic media, so much of it, this is an important initiative. And that's why they brought me on stage to speak as well. Because ultimately, when you connect through our SSP, you're having access to spend that you do not have access to today. In our work with the NNPA and NABOB, and even I saw that Mike Code is here today as well, all the different partners that we're working with to onboard to make sure you have access to that spend is very important, not only to Procter & Gamble, but also to Reset Digital. We power an initiative called the Universal Inclusion. We registered before George Floyd and Breonna Taylor, hashtag We All Eat. It's very important to us, the partnership and collaboration. This is not about crabs in a barrel.
Yeah. I will add that multicultural media is truly essential. And we're building that into the fabric of the business versus bolting it on. And this is why we're on stage, right? And showing you examples of how we are connecting in multicultural publishers into our programmatic ecosystem. We truly believe that in the future, because we see the trend reports, is that a good majority, if not all media, will be some form of programmatic. So I think it's essential that our multicultural content and publishers get connected along that journey so that they don't get left behind. If you think about programmatic media, for a lot of the Fortune 500, it is a big, if not the biggest spend pool in a lot of these companies. And we need our multicultural publishers to plug into that because this pool is just getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And you can see the marketplace, right? When Netflix, who has one of the largest libraries of content, when all of that content becomes ad supported, that's gonna be a huge pool of inventory. You already see that with Disney, you see it with Netflix and Hulu and the Rokus and the Samsungs of the world, they're already there. And then you have the multicultural publishers that are small, they will get left behind. So we are making an effort to connect the pipes and provide programs and services to connect the pipes. And I think there's a couple of opportunities. One is getting the right measurement in place and increase the inventory availability. So we got to get the programming content on the publishers. We got to get the availability of the ad inventory so that we can get the data, the dollars flowing through those pipes for programmatic.
I'll add one more piece to that. So connect the pipes. We also provide the pipes. So in the case of really small publishers that do not have an ad server, we provide the ad server. For small publishers that do not have a video player, we will provide the video player. We pay for those licenses, you don't have to. So ultimately, as a publisher, like we make sure that that is available, so there's really no barrier of entry other than putting together the work. And quite frankly, if you don't have the team, we will do all of the work for you. In the case of some publishers that have their own ad server, we will integrate directly with them, and that's definitely a connect the pipe issue. Or you may be using Google or some other bigger ad server, and we can work with that too.
All right, our next question is, how can we prove that investing in programmatic truly aids in providing economic equity to diverse media? First, I think playing in the game of programmatic is a huge first step because, at least with P&G, if you're not there, you are missing out on a large spend pool, right? So assuming that you are playing, I think it then goes back to the myth busting about the pricing, that it's a race to the bottom. It is not. It is about paying the right price for that consumer that we're engaging with. So the other end of it, again, it goes back to the efficiency, not only for us, but also for you, in that you have more capacity than to do other things. So oftentimes you talk about how we do want to do other activities around integrations. There are more resources to allow us to do that. And so that's how we see it. On the other side, we also invest in how we actually measure to see if there is a difference, if we are actually growing the ecosystem. So that is something that we also do internally.
Right, and then I'll say, the sector is depending on who you ask, $50 to $80 billion spend level. So it's one of those old sayings, if you're not in it, you can't win it, right? So you have to actually be participating to capture whatever your share is on that $50 to $80 billion, which is significant.
Right. All right, it looks like this is our last question. So how does P&G ensure culturally relevant media isn't left out of the equation, as not all diverse media offer programmatic?
I think we touched on.
I think we touched on that.
I think it's the same. It's the same bit. So ultimately, we're providing the tools and rules and infrastructure, and quite frankly, the spend. So there's absolutely no reason not to get started. In the same way that you hear people saying engage and spend, well, same thing. Meet us in the middle, or meet the marketers in the middle, and put some of your inventory in there. See how it performs. Manage your yield. Look at your average unit rates. Make sure that you're getting, what you need for that. In some cases, I was talking to Reginald at Black Doctor earlier, without even connecting. It's a true story. He said it, right? We got witnesses. Without even connecting, we helped him increase his CPM by double, just from information that's coming from the programmatic ecosystem. So, if nothing else, just the information that you will gain from the insights of $80 billion of spend is going to help your business.
So I'll take the next one. How is P&G advocating for better accuracy in third-party data that supports much of programmatic? It's a great question. We do have a suite of data sources that we use, and more, we're using first-party data from our brands, and as the first level of audience targeting, we do lookalike modeling, but we do go with that seed first, and then we expand from there. So we do believe that our first-party data is going to be the most valuable, most accurate, the most relevant data set. We also use a mix of second-party data. We have some publisher partnerships that we look at. And then the third is partners with retailers. So you notice a lot of retailers are getting into the media game, into the programmatic game, and we do have partnerships where we're using purchase-based audiences. So that's another myth, that programmatic is all third-party data. And the way P&G use it, yes, we use third-party, but we do have a greater share of data assets around first-party, second-party, and even some of our partnerships where we use that data because we see it's more high-quality data. And we call these more smart audiences versus the third-party data sets that are available to everybody in the marketplace.
All right, next question. So how are diverse media partners currently not offering programmatic made aware of your offerings to help? Is it at a cost? I think that is for you, Joe.
That must be for me. So we, Procter & Gamble and Reset, started talking about our partnership in, what was it, 2018? 2019? It was a long while ago. So every opportunity that we have, I think Mark Pritchard gets on stage and talks about the different partnerships, and Reset has been a part of that since the beginning. Most recently, in October, I believe, Tony Wells of Verizon announced our partnership and what we were doing. So we were constantly out there evangelizing via PR and messaging these opportunities, and we're here today. So feel free to stop me in the hall. You can contact through the website, and/or I can share my information. But this is an ongoing mission and mantra to make inclusive media a thing. And as you all know, this, for Procter & Gamble and for Reset, this isn't about competing for a share of the 1 or 2% or whoever you ask, 5% that's actually being spent now. This is like, how do we grow the pie? And the only way that we grow the pie is through everyone in here collaborating in different ways to increase the inventory load and opportunity.
Great. And he is here today.
And I'm here all day.
So you can speak to him today. All right.
So we got,
One more?
yeah, we
One more, I
got,
think
so
we
we
have
got
time.
2.5 minutes. Any other questions?
We have one more. So how do you measure spend on minority-owned and targeted versus mass properties that fall in Target?
So I can certainly speak to that. So the way that programmatic works, and you saw it on Eric's slide, in most instances, the device type, the internet connection, like is it Comcast versus something else, where it's coming from. So anything in the digital exhaust, and so in regard, and I forgot the question now, what was it?
Oh, it's
Measurement.
whether
It was a
it's
measurement question.
Okay, so yeah, how do you measure where it's
targeted
coming from?
or
So we
minority-owned.
also obviously then know the publisher themselves. We know the URL, and all of that information comes through. So we actually know exactly how many dollars is going. So if you're working with Reset, you'll know exactly how much money that Procter & Gamble is spending with you versus GM versus Verizon versus somebody else.
I think it's a great question. I think if you're connected in programmatically, it gives us a lot more measurement options. We can already measure, when you connect in programmatic, we already have Nielsen, we already have Moat already connected to those systems, so we do get some measurement data. But I think there's still opportunity to improve our measurement, particularly on minority and diverse-owned media. And I think that's something we all got to work on together. So the things that are not programmatic, more so than programmatic, because we do get full transparency in that space. But if you're not programmatic, I think this is where we need to come together and figure out what are the right measurement solutions that's actually going to result in more engagement and spend.
Sure.
Fantastic. Well,
All right.
thank you for the time. We are here if you have additional questions. and enjoy the rest of the conference. Tim.